Apparently, I can't stop talking about CPAC. I caught up on it the other day and saw some of the speeches, not Trump's, we already covered Trump's, but some of the other speeches. There are some interesting moments that I want to point out. Here's Josh Hawley.
You know that we are facing a crisis in our country. This is one of the great moments of crisis in American history. We're facing a fight for the republic itself, and we are facing an unprecedented alliance of radical liberals and the biggest, most powerful corporations in the history of the world. They are standing together. You know who I mean. People like Google, Facebook, have you heard of them? Twitter. These companies have more power than any companies in American history, and they're allying with the radical left to try to impose their agenda on this country. They want to run this country, and if we don't do something, they are going to. And we've got a word for that. It's called oligarchy. And that's what we're facing in America right now. And we've got a basic choice. We can have a republic where the people rule, or we can have an oligarchy where big tech and the liberals rule. And that is the choice. That is the challenge that we face today. It's a perilous moment.
You know, Josh Hawley loves to do the fake populism where he talks about the oligarchy and the people and fighting back against the moneyed interests. But take note of his examples right there. He basically just says big tech. It's Google, Facebook, and Twitter. They have, quote, more power than any companies in American history. In American history. Huh. You know who he didn't bring up? He didn't bring up the banks. He didn't bring up Wall Street. He didn't bring up the military-industrial complex. He didn't bring up Amazon. He didn't bring up a number of other companies that you can make the same claim about. More power than any companies in American history. So he talks about oligarchy, but it's limited specifically to big tech. That's like the definition of fake populism. I'm sorry, son. That's what that is. That is fake populism for sure. Because, yes, you need to call out, if you're going to talk about the oligarchy, you need to talk about Wall Street. You need to talk about Goldman Sachs and the big banks and Raytheon and Boeing and Honeywell and the military-industrial complex and billionaires. Listen, I watched his whole speech. He never says Wall Street. He never says military-industrial complex. He never says billionaires. So he fancies himself a populist, but is limited in scope to just big tech. Now, listen, I'm no fan of big tech, but I don't even know if I agree with his solutions on the big tech front. My solution, when it comes to the issue of censorship and things of that nature, I think we should basically declare these big social media outlets public utilities and then regulate them like public utilities, which means you can expand free speech protections onto these platforms. So the First Amendment would apply to these platforms because they'd be viewed as the new public square. That's my solution. His solution is break them up. Now, listen, I'm open to hearing conversations about why maybe that's preferable to my idea of treating them as public utilities, but as of right now, I'm not convinced that breaking them up is better than regulating them strictly and treating them like public utilities and expanding First Amendment protections. So I don't even know if I agree with him on his solution to this problem, but it's noteworthy that this is what he views as the main problem. You know? And listen, that's Josh Hawley for you. Now, he's been right from time to time. He was right on the $2,000 checks and some other things, but ultimately, he has supported a bunch of outsourcing deals. That's something people don't really know. Before, I don't know what his position is now, but before he opposed a minimum wage increase. He supported right-to-work legislation, which is anti-union legislation, which just means right to work for less. So yeah, forgive me if I think this populism is fake, because the record shows indeed it is kind of fake. And I just want you to realize, it is noteworthy that when he talks about the oligarchy, there's nothing on Wall Street or the military-industrial complex or billionaires. It's only big tech. That's like classic pseudo-populism nonsense, and it's pretty transparent if you're willing to pay attention.